The granite outcrops above the rift valley normally shifted their moods with the passing hours. Morning light crept across the boulders in gold streaks. Noon washed everything in white glare. Afternoon brought shadows that stretched long and thin like tired fingers. But today, nothing changed. The sun hung in the same position for hours, not rising, not lowering, not dimming. A strange, pale stillness clung to the landscape, flattening colors and muting sound. Among the warm stones, a rock Hyrax, known by researchers as Miri, lifted her round head. Her whiskers twitched. Hyraxes were sun timers, their entire physiology depended on reading the day's progress from heat, shadows, and shifting light. But today, the warmth of the stones was wrong. It wasn't rising or falling. It simply stayed. Miri crawled onto a flat slab of granite. Usually it burned her paws by midday, but now the heat was gentle, the same gentle heat she felt at sunrise. Below the cliff, Dr. Nyla Farrows, an ecologist studying thermoregulation in Hyrax colonies, checked her wristwatch, then the sky, then the watch again. "Samir," she called calmly, too calmly. "What time is it?" Her field assistant, Samir Adongo, looked at his own watch. 11:46. The sun, however, sat low, barely above the eastern ridge. Sunrise position. 2 hours after sunrise at most. Nyla frowned. Solar elevation doesn't match the clock. Samir squinted. Fog refracting? Atmospheric? Something? There's no fog. No haze. Miri hopped down, joining two younger Hyraxes. They chirped nervously. The colony knew something was wrong. Shadows were the same length they'd been hours ago. The birds noticed too. A pair of rock martins circled uncertainly. Their instincts relied on the upward drift of warm afternoon air, but no drift came. Even insects moved strangely, slow and cautious, confused by a daylight that didn't progress. Nyla wiped sweat from her forehead, even though the sun was weak. "Thermal gradient is frozen," she murmured. "The day isn't advancing." Samir shielded his eyes. "Then what is it doing?" Nyla stared at the frozen sun position. "Waiting," she whispered. Miri pressed herself between warm stones, curling into safety. The world had paused. And the day refused to change. Hours passed, yet the light never shifted. Shadows stayed short, sharp, and identical. It was as if time itself had flattened. Miri ventured out cautiously. She scrambled across the boulders, snuffling at tufts of dry grass and listening for predators. Hyraxes were small, vulnerable creatures, their survival depended on reading the landscape. But a landscape that didn't change was harder to read than one full of threats. She looked up. The sun still hovered low in the east, frozen in its early morning glare. Samir checked the solar meter again. Elevation angle hasn't changed in 5 hours. Nyla paced. Atmospheric scattering is normal. Temperature gradient is stable. But the sun isn't climbing. Samir hesitated. Could the instruments be wrong? All of them? No. Something rustled in the brush below. A rock agama lizard darted out, its colors unusually dull. The animal paused to bask, but there was no intensifying heat to trigger its chromatic shift. It growled irritably, confused. Miri chirped sharply, calling out to the colony. Several Hyraxes gathered on a boulder, staring at the sun with wide, blinking eyes. Their whiskers twitched in unison. The light didn't change. The warmth didn't grow or fade. It was as if the world were stuck in a single stretched moment. Nyla crouched beside the largest granite slab, pressing her palm to its surface. It should be hotter by now. Granite absorbs heat fast. Her voice trembled. But it's the same temperature as this morning. Samir scanned the horizon. "Should we alert the university?" "I already did," she said quietly. "But our satellite uplink is behaving strangely too. It keeps sending the same timestamp." "Repeating?" "Yes." A bird cried overhead, a raptor, disoriented by static daylight. It spiraled clumsily before settling on a branch, panting. Without changing thermals, it couldn't rise. Miri watched it with dark, round eyes. Hyraxes were prey to many predators. But today, even predators seemed confused. Samir pointed suddenly. "Look at that ridge, isn't the shadow flickering?" Nyla turned. The ridge shadow did flicker, not longer, not shorter, but trembling, as though something beneath the earth shifted the light just slightly, then restored it again. Samir took a step back. Is the ground moving? No, Nyla said softly. The day is dot by what should have been afternoon. Insects that normally hid from the heat were still active. Reptiles had not retreated to shade. Birds had not soared. Nothing behaved as it should. Miri rested against a stone that remained warm, but unchanged. No discomfort. No burn. No midday spike. The consistency unnerved her. Hyraxes timed their feeding, mating, and retreats into crevices by the subtle changes in heat. Now every moment felt the same. On the cliff's edge, Nyla set up a thermal camera. What do you see? Samir asked. She stared at the display. Nothing makes sense. The radiative exchange is flat. Flat? The stones aren't absorbing more heat. The air isn't warming. The ground isn't cooling. Everything is stuck. Samir exhaled slowly. Like a thermal pause. Or a thermal lock, Nyla corrected. Miri sniffed the air. A faint metallic tang lingered. She turned sharply as a stir began beneath the boulders. A caracal stepped into the open, muscles sleek, eyes narrowed. It moved with unusual hesitation, testing the unchanged shadows. Its hunting instincts, based on time of day, didn't guide it. Miri froze. Hyrax and caracal held still in unnatural daylight. The predator's whiskers twitched. It didn't pounce. Instead, it backed away, unnerved. Nyla watched this from her vantage point. When predators behave like prey, something fundamental is wrong. Samir scanned the horizon. Is the sun brighter than before? Or is the sky dimmer? Nyla squinted. Neither. The spectral distribution is constant. Samir stared at her. So the sun isn't moving, the shadows aren't growing, the stones aren't heating, and the sky isn't changing. Nyla nodded. Yes, Samir. The day itself is stuck. Miri chirped sharply, alarm spreading through the colony. Because the stones around her, despite being warm, had begun to tremble. The trembling grew subtle, rhythmic. Not a quake. Quakes rattled violently. This was a pulse. Miri pressed her belly flat against the stone. Hyraxes were sensitive to microvibrations. She felt each tremor clearly, like a heartbeat beneath her paws. Samir steadied himself. Vibration sensors are picking this up too. The frequency is too regular. Nyla knelt. It's coming from deep lithospheric layers. But it's not rising. No, she said with widening eyes. It's sustaining. The day would not advance. The temperature would not change. And the earth would not shift its rhythm. Miri crept between stones, deeper into the crevice. Her colony followed her lead, retreating earlier than usual, yet it wasn't earlier, because time no longer meant anything. Above them, the sun remained frozen in its low arc. Nyla checked her watch. We've been in the same light angle for 14 hours. Samir swallowed. If the planet's rotation slowed even slightly, we'd feel catastrophic atmospheric drag. Ocean distortion. Polar jet collapse. She pointed upward. The sky isn't moving like it should. Samir whispered, are you suggesting Earth stopped? Not stopped, Nyla said. Held. Held in a single moment. The pulse beneath the stones intensified, not dangerous, but persistent. In perfect rhythm. Hyraxes huddled. Birds perched silently. Even the caracal hid in shadow. A low, hollow sound drifted across the cliffs, not from sky or ground, but something deeper. Samir's skin crawled. What was that? Nyla stared toward the horizon. I think, she whispered, the earth is trying to restart. The pulse grew stronger, echoing through the granite like a drumbeat. Miri pressed herself deeper into the stone cleft, squeezing beside other Hyraxes, their small bodies trembling together. The sky flickered. Just once. A jolt of brightness flashed, not lightning, not reflection, but a momentary correction, like a projector skipping a frame. Samir shouted, Nyla, the shadows. She spun. Shadows lengthened. Slowly. Beautifully. After nearly a full day of being frozen, they moved. The sun rose a fraction of a degree. And the warmth began to change, subtle but real. Miri felt it immediately. The stone beneath her warmed by 1 degree. Then another. A true morning gradient, restored. Nyla laughed breathlessly. Thermal flux is returning. Samir tracked the solar angle. Rotation is normalizing. The freeze is ending. The pulse beneath the ground faded. Hyraxes emerged tentatively. Birds took tentative flight. The caracal resumed its silent prowl. The world remembered how to move. Miri climbed atop the highest boulder, squinting at the shifting sun. She chirped, a clear, piercing call, one that echoed through a valley that could finally carry sound again. Nyla looked up at the sky. The day is progressing. But then she noticed something else. A faint, rhythmic fluctuation still lingered in the ground. Subtle. Persistent. A reminder. Samir checked the meter. The freeze cycle wasn't random. Nyla nodded slowly. And it might return. Miri stood tall on the stone, eyes bright. The day had remembered itself, but the memory of stillness remained beneath the earth. Waiting. For 3 days after the world restarted its rhythm, the highlands above the Rift Valley behaved almost normally. Almost. The sun finally climbed and dipped again, shadows lengthened and shortened, the warmth of the stones rose and fell as it always had. Hyraxes basked in the early light, retreated at noon, and emerged again before dusk. But something was off, small things, subtle things, the kind that prey animals notice long before humans did. Miri sensed it first. She sat on her favorite flat boulder at what should have been late afternoon. The warmth under her paws was perfect, not too hot, not cooling yet. Her whiskers twitched. Then she saw it. Her shadow stretched forward across the rock. Long. Very long. Much too long. The sun behind her was still high, nowhere near the horizon. Yet her shadow behaved as if dusk had arrived early. She tilted her head. The shadow tilted with her, but lagged by a fraction of a second. Hyrax shadows never lagged. She scampered backward, chirping a sharp warning. Below the ridge, Nyla and Samir were taking new measurements. Unlike the sun freeze event, things now looked normal according to most instruments. Most. Samir frowned at the horizon. Nyla. Why is the light dimmer? It's only 3 o'clock. Nyla squinted. Atmospheric scattering is in normal range. But the brightness is dropping. Nyla adjusted a photometer. No. The brightness is constant. Then why does the landscape look darker? Nyla didn't answer, because she didn't know. Miri watched her shadow grow even longer. She backed into a crevice. Other Hyraxes noticed too. They chirped anxiously, scurrying into the rock maze with uncharacteristic urgency. Farther down the slope, a troop of vervet monkeys paused mid-foraging. Several looked up at the sun, blinking rapidly. They showed signs of confusion, glancing at their own shadows, then at each other. Samir gasped. Nyla. Look behind us. On the western ridge, the shadow line moved too fast. It crept forward across the valley as though the sun were setting, yet the sun hadn't moved at all. Nyla's pulse quickened. This can't be happening again. Samir held his breath. Is time slipping? No. Nyla's voice trembled. The sun is stable. The temperature curve is correct. Then why is the light behaving like dusk? Nyla crouched, checking the angle of illumination on a rock. The direction of the light is correct, she whispered. But the intensity gradient is wrong. Meaning? The light isn't fading. It's being pulled. Samir stared at the advancing dusk line. By what? Nyla looked around, scanning the stones, the sky, the valley, everything. Her voice dropped to a whisper. By the ground. The earth trembled again, subtly, rhythmically, the same pulse that had existed before the sun freeze, but stronger now, more insistent. Shadows lengthened further, stretching unnaturally, not because of the sun, but because the landscape itself was altering how it reflected the light. Hyraxes shoved deeper into crevices. Birds fell silent. Even the wind stopped for a moment. The day was not stuck this time. It was being bent. The earth was remembering something, or preparing for something, and the light itself was responding. Nyla exhaled shakily. We fixed nothing, she murmured. The cycle didn't restart naturally. It restarted under tension. Samir pointed to Miri's ridge. Look. The Hyrax stood alone, shadow towering behind her, tall, stretched, reaching farther than any Hyrax shadow had a right to reach at this hour. Miri chirped sharply, her call echoing across the rocks. The landscape answered back with a low vibration. As if acknowledging her. As if aware. Nyla felt the stone beneath her hand thrum once, twice, in a pattern. A memory of stillness. A rehearsal for another freeze. And somewhere deep in the valley, a new shadow formed, not cast by sun or stone, but by something shifting beneath the earth. The day had returned. But stability had not. The world wasn't finished changing. Not yet.